the hypotheticals, the typical What If Wednesday we're doing today. And the first one I've been meaning to ask Charlie about because every time it even gets brushed past, he's like, God damn it, I don't care. So I'm very excited. What if, Charlie, for our first hypothetical of the day, the Flyers were interested in Peyton Krebs. 17th overall pick in 2019 by Vegas. He's traded to Buffalo in the Eichel deal. Right. He's going to be 24 in January. 4 goals, 17 points in 80 games last year. 20 goals, 66 points in 215 career games. He's one of these unsigned RFAs we've been talking about. Obviously, there's a difference between the St. Louis Edmonton situation with the offer sheet or acquiring those guys in some way. I know you don't want to just talk about offer sheets, but like those are players. Talking about offer sheets. Holloway and Broberg are highly touted prospects potentially who couldn't break through on a win now team. And it's like, it's not Edmonton's job to develop you at the NHL level, trying to win the best player in the world a cup right now. This guy hasn't been able to break out in Buffalo where opportunities abound. So maybe he's just not that good. But what if the Flyers were interested in Krebs?
Well, so this really all just stems from, and this is never something that I've heard. I have never had a conversation with a Flyers person that has like voluntarily brought up the name Peyton Krebs. But the person who has been on this from really dating back to 2019 is Anthony Sanfilippo. Anthony Sanfilippo reported before the 2019 draft that the Flyers scouts like Peyton Krebs. Now, that was the draft. The Flyers ultimately took Cam York. Peyton Krebs was taken a few picks later. And then generally speaking, I'm not saying that Anthony is the only one, but I feel like he's probably the driver. Whenever conversations pop up or rumors pop up about the Flyers and talks with Buffalo or exploring things with Buffalo, ASF tends to bring up the Flyers have liked Krebs for a long time. Maybe they go for him. I have never heard that they love Peyton Krebs. That said, Anthony breaks news. So it's very possible that they have liked him for a long time. The reason why I'm just not that into it is like he's 24, right? And he's never been good. I don't know. He's just, to me, he's a very underwhelming player. Now, is it possible the Flyers could unearth something that has yet to be discovered in him at the NHL level? The difference to me between Krebs and Owen Tippett is, and this is, again, my personal bias, I always really liked Owen Tippett's skill set. Dating back to the 2017 draft, I remember watching tape of him being like, man, this guy's got a hell of a freaking shot, and he's a damn good skater, and he's big. That draft, the 2019 draft of Peyton Krebs, I was just like, hey, he's fine. Like, okay, he's kind of one of those, like, okay at everything, not really good at anything types of guys. He plays with a bit of an edge, so that's cool. Maybe the Flyers will dig that. But to me, he was like a whatever guy, and he's turned into a whatever NHL player. So there's nothing about Peyton Krebs that gets me excited. Like, zero things. His underlying numbers at the NHL level so far have stunk. He's never scored much at the NHL level. No. As you said, he hasn't been able to break through on Buffalo, a team where there is opportunity everywhere because they ain't that good. I just don't view Peyton Krebs as anything special. If they took a shot at him, sure. Like, at least, like, for example, compare him to Ryan Poehling. At the very least, I could look at Ryan Poehling going into last season and be like, he's a real good skater. And you know what? Can always use real good skaters and see if he can make something out of them. There's nothing about Peyton Krebs' game that makes it be like, man, I really want to see what that guy has. To me, he's just a guy. Maybe I'm wrong, but to me, he's just a guy.
He certainly didn't score a hat trick in his debut.
Sure didn't. He did not do that.
He only had 4 goals all of last year. Now, that's the thing is, like, this guy specifically, I feel like there's been some conversation about for a few years, like you said, but man, it's not as if he's really blocked, from doing something and from scoring more than 4 goals in a season with Buffalo.
This to me is a guy where I don't see the point of trading for him. Like, wait until Buffalo eventually gives up on him, doesn't tender him a contract, and then you can do what you did with Poehling. That's the path. That's the path he's going down right now because he hasn't been good.
And Buffalo, like, they like to sign these guys early. We've seen it. They still haven't signed Krebs. It's very possible that he is going down that path, maybe sooner than later. Like he might be acquirable for free at some point soon. But yeah, I think he's the name on the unsigned RFA list that the Flyers have had some linkage to in the past.
He's been linked to the Flyers before. I thought Krebs made some sense. Like, if the Flyers had, because we talked about this, we talked about Buffalo and Ottawa, or the two teams we brought up about, maybe there's a trade to be made because those two teams both look like teams that are looking to do something stupid this summer. Buffalo, this is something I have heard that they had in the past, both them and Ottawa for that matter, at times had interest in Scott Laughton. And my thought process was, hey, you know what? If you can work out a deal with Buffalo to send them Scott Laughton, if you decided that you're willing to do that, maybe Krebs is in that deal. Now, the idea of Krebs being the centerpiece, I didn't like that because I don't think he's good enough to be the centerpiece of a deal trading Scott Laughton, personally. That's just my view. But if it's like a second-round pick and Peyton Krebs for Scott Laughton, I could have lived with that.
Yeah.
And then because then suddenly a spot opens up. I mean, Scott Laughton is probably going to play a bottom six center role for this team. Suddenly, if you trade Scott Laughton, there's Peyton Krebs' spot. Now you have a spot to evaluate Peyton Krebs and see what he is. With Scott Laughton still on this team, like their roster's pretty full.
That's the other part of this is they do have to, in all likelihood, it is the Flyers, so who the hell knows? But in all likelihood, the roster right now and what we think it is what it's going to be on opening night.
Yeah, especially now that they're kind of in limbo with this cap situation due to the Johansson thing.
However, what if this is part of something? What if? All right, we have this $4 million. We're in limbo with it, so we can't use it. But what if we just LTIR Ryan Else? Suddenly we can use some space, and there's going to be a settlement. We'll figure that part out, and we'll like. What if they go after a Thomas Harley, a Mo Sider, one of these unsigned RFAs who are very good? Like, there are some guys.
You are just always looking.
There are some guys who it makes sense to go after. When I hear St. Louis's GM saying, I would send an offer sheet on a team run by my mother if I had to, if I thought it was going to make my team better, I wonder why everyone doesn't have this mentality. It's a tool in the CBA that is to be used. And honestly, it wasn't until Brian Burke threw a fucking fit about it that everyone was, oh, you just don't do this amongst gentlemen. We're not gentlemen. We're fucking hockey players. Like, what are we doing here? There's bare-fisted fighting on the ice. You get a 5-minute Gatorade break.
Yeah, but we're all buddies when we're off the ice in the boardroom.
Upstairs is
in the boardroom.
Yeah, we're dapping each other up upstairs. This is a family, man. We don't do this to each other. Like, it's something that you can do. They could do it if they wanted.
Well, but the thing you always leave out when it comes to offer sheets is that
they have to sign.
It takes a player willing to sign it.
I know.
There's no indication that Thomas Harley wants to leave Dallas. There's no indication that Mo Sider wants to leave Detroit.
A big bag of money. A big bag of money would change their feeling about that.
I'm imagining you being Les Grossman in Tropic Thunder. Tom Cruise is like, oh, a jet and lots of money.
G4, baby.
G4.
No, it's just like, yes, exactly. That's how you change their minds. Like, is Philip Broberg worth what they gave to him? Would he probably rather play for a cup contender than be in the Midwest for a middling team? Yeah, I bet.
I got news for you. Flyers are a middling team too.
And that's how you attract them, by paying them a whole bunch of money. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Like, if you think the guy is if you think he has the upside to one day be worth it, give it to him now. That's, you'll save money in the long term. Says, oh yeah, well when he hits UFA, he's getting overpaid, because that's what UFAs get, is overpaid. Like, I know it's not going to happen. It just fucking infuriates me that it won't, and that there's no chance. Oh, and like half the league is looking at St. Louis right now like, you snakes. You signed a player who was available to be signed. Like, why is that bad?
I agree. I do not think that there should be peer pressure to not do offer sheets. I think that concept is very stupid.
It just, there's so many. I can find these guys. Jeremy Swayman, Lucas Raymond, Beniers has signed. Mo Sider, Cole Perfetti, Sillinger is signed.
And Perfetti's interesting to me because
that's the interesting one.
It's clear that Winnipeg is not sure what they have in Cole Perfetti.
Yes. And they are, like I said a minute ago, delusional.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Just like, oh, yeah, we're good. Like, if Connor Hellebuck wins the Vezina, which always on the table.
Yeah, he's real good.
But if he wins the Vezina or is a Vezina finalist, you could win your division. Mm-hmm. That's it.
That's your ceiling.
That's it. Like, once you get into the playoffs, yeah, I guess you could steal your 4 series. It's unlikely, though.
In fairness, though, and again, we talked about this with Nashville. Nashville is less focused on winning a cup and more focused on filling the building.
They have to stay in business.
Winnipeg is struggling to fill the building now, and they're a team in Winnipeg.
Like, them getting Scheifele and Hellebuck to resign was huge.
Yeah.
Like, the jerseys they get to sell because of that makes it worth it.
They can't afford to have 4 years of being bad.
No, their owner just came out and said, like, hey, we need you to come out or it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
And like, you know, it's happened once. This isn't hypothetical.
It has happened before.
This isn't hypothetical. It ain't What If Wednesday for them. Like, it happened and it will again.
Yeah.
We just saw another team move who was, you know, like the NHL was hell bent on making that work.
Yeah.
It didn't.
Yeah, the team that got Winnipeg.
Yeah, they never wanted Winnipeg to begin with. Like,
that was the old Winnipeg franchise.
That was a market. That was a market that the NHL didn't want. It was just like, oh, they keep asking. All right, trying to make it work this time. they can't afford to not do it. So I get it, but they are delusional in thinking like, oh yeah, we're gonna go to a West final and then what? Losing 5? Like, you're not. But the fact that they can't keep these guys like McGroarty, like, I don't know, just like develop them and play them.
Yeah, put them in the NHL.
Cole Perfetti, like getting scratched in the playoffs. Like, what good does this do you?
Yeah.
Like, maybe there is something there.
Yeah, like, are your third and fourth liners really that good?
Yeah.
Are they?
It's unlikely.
Unlikely.
No one's are. You know, like, unless you're one of the best teams. Yeah. But like, I do think so that if they were anyone on this list, do you think Perfetti? I know it's a 0 to 5%. So Perfetti is the 5% chance that they could maybe make something happen.
He's the one guy.
Hypothetically, it might be a fit.
He's the one guy who I would think could be convinced to sign an offer sheet. Now, the Flyers, I don't know if they're going to be the team that does it, especially now, as I said, they are now in cap limbo because they have this contract termination thing tying them up. We'll see how that plays out. So I don't think the Flyers will do it. But, like, we didn't really hear anything about Holloway being annoyed, but there were rumblings that Philip Broberg was like, hey, I'm, like, stuck in the AHL. I'm a former, top 15 pick. I'm ready. What the hell, guys? He was going to be predisposed towards listening on an offer sheet in a way that, Thomas Hardy, who is a top 4 defenseman on a cup contender, probably it's going to take a lot more to convince him to say, yeah, I don't want to be a star anymore.
In a tax-free state.
In a tax-free state.
It's always important to remember. No, yeah, I do feel like it has to be. And we were getting questions about Broberg, like January, February, leading up to the deadline. It was like, hey, what, I think maybe that's someone the Flyers could pry loose because they're not playing him. He doesn't seem all that happy with being in the AHL, hasn't stuck. And like I said, Oilers are in this win now. Like, we need you to contribute positively, or
sense.
We need someone else. Like, the Flyers are in more of a situation like, okay, let's find out. But ultimately, he ends up in St. Louis. I just think, like, there's someone out there that the Flyers could convince. Like, hey, man, we have no centers. You would be our 1C immediately. You'd play with Matvei Michkov. It would be fun for everybody. Someone would want that opportunity.
You have really reached the point of the summer where you are just we've had a week where we've had 2 big news stories on Monday and Tuesday, and Bill is still just starved for more.
Getting rid of Ryan Johansson, who is never going to be here, doesn't make the team better. Okay. Like, that's the thing. I want the team, and not for this year. I don't care if they make the playoffs. Honestly, if the goalies stink and they get a top 5 pick, that's probably the best thing for this team. But like, I want the future of this team, 2026-ish forward, to somehow be brighter than it is right now. Adding young players who might have the potential to be very good is how you do that. These are young players who are available. They are unsigned RFAs or they're disgruntled dudes, like whatever it is. These are the, like you wrote that article in the beginning of the offseason, or like right after free agency and all that, the missed opportunity. I'm not saying the Flyers are fucking up. I'm just saying they're going to have to do something at some point. This is one of those opportunities to do things. Whether you do or not, that's up to you. But until you do something, I'm going to say you're not doing anything. Mm-hmm. Like, that's it.
Okay. And you're going to point it out every time something happens.
Until they do. He has to make the team better at some point. He has not yet. I'm not saying he should be fired. I'm just saying until he does something, he hasn't. Okay. Like, the team has to get better. Okay. Otherwise, it's just what we are.
Well, or the players on the team get better.
Yes, that is a possibility for some of these dudes. Others who are like 24, 25, 26, they are what they are. Okay. Maybe Tyson Forster scores 45 goals this year, and it's like, oh, shit, he's 2 levels better than I thought he was. That would be awesome. I'm not banking on that, and if Danny Briere is, he's living in a fantasy land.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
We all silly like the mayor.